Welcome to Big Life Weekly Series, where we empower high achievers to break free from limits, unlock their natural potential, and live a big life. I'm your host, Robert Acosta, and each week we will explore the strategies, mindsets, and tools you need to thrive, not just in your professional career, but in every aspect of your life. Whether you're a leader looking for a better balanced life, an entrepreneur aiming for sustainable success, or someone ready to take the next step toward your best self, this podcast is your space to grow, reflect, and take action. Let's dive into today's episode. Hello, I'm Robert Acosta, and I'm connected with Kim Peirano from Courage to Transform Practice in Auckland, USA. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you.
So let's get started right away. So I really want to capture as much as we can to highlight your main activity or your main business. So Kim, can you give us a 90-second overview of what your business does and why you got into it?
Sure. 90 seconds is so fast. So I am a coach and hypnotherapist. I also am an acupuncturist, and it's sort of a separate practice. And I focus, so kind of the coaching and hypnotherapy practice kind of bloomed out of the COVID pandemic, where we had to close down kind of in-person practices for a while, and it's not really possible to do acupuncture online. So I had to figure out like what's the next steps, and coaching and hypnotherapy had been kind of part of my practice, but not its kind of own thing. And so I started to build out that business as a way to kind of reach more people. So I focus a lot on working with people who have kind of chronic and terminal illnesses a lot of the time. So we work on kind of the mental, emotional aspects of that whole experience. So like if you have a really heavy diagnosis, there's a lot that comes up with that, including the physical piece, but also like our experience of it. What does my life mean now that I have this disease and can't do the things I used to do? So that's a good chunk of people that I work with. Also people who are just going through major life changes. Those can be positive and negative, right? Like we lose loved ones, or we like have a new baby and move and get a new job. Like all of those things usually require some sort of recombobulation is a word I've been using a lot lately, which apparently is not actually a word, but like getting things back together, finding our bearings again with this like new reality we have. And then the final kind of group of people I work with are people who've been harmed by cults, coercive control, like high control groups and religions, spiritual abuse, and just kind of abusive relationships. All of those kind of fall under that lens of coercive control. And that was informed by my own experience in a new age cult. And my deconstruction from that led me to work more in that space. So that's a little bit about what I do.
So how do you get into it? So everything started? What was your journey that provoked you to start this new business, let's say?
So my like long-term story, I initially started out like in college doing television production, and I was really excited about that, and then kind of moved on to the next thing, which was business management. Found that really boring. I ended up graduating college with a degree in sculpture and jewelry making. Kind of a pointless degree in and of itself, but like a really cool skill set that I learned. And then I had ended up working like out of school in an insurance underwriting job, which was kind of the antithesis of being an artist. But at that time, it was like the first time I had kind of disposable income. So I had some extra money. And so I got really into yoga and was like, oh, maybe this is what I want to do and be a yoga teacher. And somehow through just like going to events at the yoga studio, ended up meeting a chiropractor who had marketed himself as a naturopath. I started working with, he did a presentation which was really fascinating, and he talked about like how all the different things in the body are connected to each other, and I was like, yeah, that totally makes sense. And I was dealing with a lot of kind of undiagnosed digestive issues, so I started working with him, was really fascinated with the whole process, uh, and so I was like, I want to go become a naturopath. And in the US, like a naturopath school is like an ND instead of an MD, so it's medical school.
Mhm.
Um, and I had an art degree, so it would have required like a whole extra bachelor's, which I didn't want to do. And in that, like searching for naturopath schools, came across acupuncture school, um, and without thinking very much about it, I just basically signed up for acupuncture school. I had never had acupuncture, knew basically nothing about it, was kind of told in my onboarding that it's just the same as being a naturopath. You just don't prescribe medicine, which was kind of a lie. But I ended up in acupuncture school, like in this kind of very random happenstance way. And then have had an acupuncture practice since graduating, and that coaching and hypnotherapy element has kind of come in over time, um, just in how my practice has changed over time. So, like, I started out being really interested in facial acupuncture and anti-aging stuff, and then it's sort of shifted into more mental health and wellness and stress, which is where coaching came in. And then I became a Jungian transformational coach. I did a whole certification there and some more certifications in hypnosis. And then like as I said before, like with the pandemic and having to take some things online,
Right.
um, really kind of started to focus more on doing that coaching and hypnosis, and was really liking it a lot, because it's so customizable and interesting, and everybody's stories are so
Wow.
fascinating.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, a great story. And so, what do you enjoy the most about your work in the life coaching or everything that you do right now?
Yeah. So one of the things that like, if you've come to any of my social media profiles, I kind of talk a lot about coercive control and cults, and how those things interplay in like different sectors. So we see that happen a lot in wellness, where people get kind of taken advantage of. So one of the things that I'm really excited about is like, how can we bring a really ethical lens to the world of wellness, where we can like bridge two worlds together? Because some people will be like, oh, you have cancer, you definitely need to go do all of the treatments you have, and getting a Reiki healing or something is totally quackery, right? Um, and some people will say the exact opposite thing. And so I work to help people like bridge the two worlds together, so we can like do the treatments we need to do and get the other support that we need to get, which might be in kind of these unproven territories, that might still be really beneficial. And how can we recognize who's an ethical person to work with, who's going to help me with that balance, so you don't get scammed or you don't end up with a disease that gets worse because somebody coached you out of doing a treatment. Um, and so that's something that I've been really uh, excited about, seems like the wrong word, but passionate about, with helping people, because I've kind of seen how some of these things can
Yeah.
be really harmful.
Yeah, I think always working with people is a little tricky,
Yeah.
and you have to be very careful. And really, for you personally, how do you define success in all the work that you do?
Oh wow, because that's so there's so many different ways we can be successful, right?
So,
Um, And, first and foremost, it's like, let's financially supported by what we do. Like, we can't really do it without that sort of support. And so there's success in that way. I think success for me personally is like being able to be financially supported and do these things, and like stay true with like the values that I hold. So like not selling out to something, or just promoting some sort of treatment or whatever it is, because it might make me a bunch of money, even though it doesn't actually provide a benefit to that client or patient.
yeah, that doesn't make sense, or it wouldn't make sense for you morally or personally,
Right.
right? So,
Exactly.
and I know this industry is growing, and there are a lot of coaches in different kind of practices. But I'm curious. I'm just curious. what is the biggest problem or challenge you see in your industry, in the coaching or life coaching industry, and how are you solving that for yourself, your clients, or any referral partners that you may have?
Yeah. There's kind of like twofold. There's like the practitioner problem and then the client problem. On the practitioner side, it's, obviously it's always like, how do we find clients? And how do I like reach those people? I've been trying to figure out like, where is my time best spent with like making social media content or writing or whatever it is. Um, and just that aspect of reaching people and then like communicating with them in a way that helps them understand what I do. So there's like a little deficit where like I'm not a licensed therapist, right? Like as a coach, like nobody has a license, and that's something I think a lot of consumers don't know about. Is like coaches and nutritionists, and there's even hypnotherapists. Like that's not a licensed industry, so there's some uh, public education needs to go on to like help them understand like people can be really good and very helpful at what they do and really well trained in it, even though it's not licensed.
Right.
But not being licensed also means that there's going to be other people in that industry who aren't well trained or who just woke up yesterday and are like, I'm a life coach. So
Yeah.
how can we really discern who these people are that like have the education, experience, just kind of bandwidth and ability to like really hold space for some really heavy stuff or whatever it is, and be able to give you support and guidance in a way that's like helpful for you in your unique way instead of like being me projecting what I want you to do onto it, which is a thing that can really um, happen in kind of any sort of coaching environment or where we have that like practitioner client dynamic.
So I guess you solved that problem for yourself with having more referrals and word of mouth of all those kind of things rather than just posting something that talks about you. So it's through referrals and through other clients talking about you that say, this is a good coach, this is the way to go, this is really helpful, and that's the way you create your clientele, I guess, right?
Yeah, and like for me, working with other medical practitioners is really helpful because that's a big demographic of people I work with. So like a cancer center or other doctors and other practitioners. Also doing things like this where we're talking about it on a podcast or somebody else's platform. I like to do a lot of writing, so that's another big thing that I like to do is like my blog is pretty consistent.
Oh, that's good. So that's the way people know more about you even before having a conversation with you, right?
Right.
So, having said that, who would you say is your ideal client, and what significant outcomes can they expect when working with you?
Yeah. I love working with people who are like motivated to do the work, which just sounds like a silly thing in some sense, because like we're all kind of like motivated, but at different levels, right? Where we can think about it, and then there's the person who's actually like, okay,
Doing it.
maybe this is uncomfortable, or maybe it's weird, or like I'm gonna go to a place I haven't been before because what I've been doing doesn't work anymore.
Right.
So those are obviously the the pinnacle of clients are the ones who are like, yeah, let's do it. Um, and aside from that, like we could be working on all kinds of different things. Maybe that person, I think they probably also share a similar kind of value of like really wanting balance in what they're doing. And they're probably also like a person who, and I was talking with a friend the other day about like being an acupuncturist is a lot of like making sense out of things that don't make sense. Um, is kind of a skill set that most acupuncturists really have because
Right.
the whole system of medicine is so like metaphoric and confusing. So when we're going through a situation in life where like all these different things are happening and nothing makes sense anymore, and how do I find the path forward and what's even going on? Those are great people for me to work with because I have that unique ability to kind of help sew all the different pieces together.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. So you know how nowadays more people are actively seeking solutions to achieve better outcomes. So what makes you unique in the way you help them achieve those outcomes?
Yeah. Um, so one of the first kind of tools and processes that I do in working with somebody is helping them figure out what their goals are. So it's like, what do we want that outcome to be, right? And I think of goals in a couple of, there's kind of three different types of goals. And we have like optimization goals, which like in the wellness world might be like, take this supplement and live an extra 10 years, right? Which is a hard thing to track and measure. It might be really expensive. Like we don't know when your expiration date is. It's kind of a like, that's the goal that we should put on at the very last.
Right.
In a life sense, maybe that's like I want to make $1 million in 6 months when we don't have a job at all. Is it possible? Sure, but like that's a hard thing to figure out. Then we have like specific goals, which is like if you wrote down a goals list, probably what would end up on it. Like I want to have a stable income, I want to feel happy, I want to lose 10 pounds, like whatever it is. And so we take that like list of specific goals, and then I want you to think about like what what does achieving that goal mean for you? Like how do you feel? Who do you become? What's your life look like once we have those things? And I call these the core goals. So it's kind of like I use weight loss as an example often because it's so very clear cut. Like if we lost 20 pounds, we might think we'd have more confidence or be more attractive or get a new partner or our relationship would be better. And we can see pretty easily how like we could probably achieve those things without ever changing the weight on the scale. And so we want to use the core goals to like inform all of the other things we do in our life. So if like I think I need to lose 20 pounds to have more self-esteem and a better relationship, and then I go do this really restrictive diet that I fail every week. And so that makes me feel really guilty and feel a lot of shame because I can't be successful at doing this really extreme diet. And then I'm grumpy because I'm hungry and I fight with my partner more. Like we're moving away from those core goals. So like that self-esteem and the better relationship, what I'm doing to achieve that specific goal is actually pulling me away. So we get underneath of like, what are the things I think I want? What do they mean for me? And then how can I take steps towards the things I think I want, which might change over time. Like I want very different things than I wanted when I was 20, right? And how do we make sure that the steps I'm taking are still in alignment with like what those things mean to me? And so that's kind of how I help people move towards what they want is like maintaining, again, like with maintaining that balance and that integrity with yourself and what you really want to achieve over time.
Yeah, yeah. Goal setting, I think, is the first and foremost step in order to accommodate everything else in your life. So let me ask you this: what's the strangest or funniest incident that you had experienced while working with your life coaching or your business in life coaching industry? Is there any strange or funny thing that happened to you lately or somewhere in your journey that you can recall and share?
That list is never ending. One of the funny, like, just kind of weird things that happens, and then I've talked to a lot of my peers and colleagues, and this seems to happen to everybody. This last week, actually, I I do a acupuncture pop-up at my gym, and the person I was working on like had done a deadlift the day or two before, and something popped in their back, and it was like hurting in this very specific spot. And like 4 hours later, my back hurts at the same spot. And like it like kind of actually went out. And I think from like carrying the massage table, which are really awkward to carry. And then the rest of the week, I had like two new patients and one previous patient, like all with the same exact pain. And then the next time I was in the gym, like another girl in the gym kind of did a movement that caused the same thing. So like as I transmuted out, it was like kind of like this weird virus, right? Where like the back pain went from her to me to somebody else to somebody else. And it's so odd that kind of happens
Right.
um, in these sort of like healing industries, or even like in coaching and hypnosis. Like somebody will come in and they'll have like the same thing that I struggle with. So it's always this kind of mirror of whatever
Right.
you're dealing with, which I think is like helpful for us as a practitioner because we gain so much out of it. But also, um, like if I'm dealing with that same type of back pain, like I'm doing all the different things to correct it, which makes me much better at helping you deal with the same type of back pain because we're in it together in this sort of funny way.
So you became an expert of healing that kind of pain with all those cases.
Totally.
All right. So what do you see as the coming trends within your business or within the coaching or life coaching and even acupuncture or wellness, I would say, industry? And how are you staying on top of that?
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. I haven't thought much about that. I think one of the things that I've been seeing a lot is like a lot of polarization where like, there's a lot of very flamboyant information out there that's like this is all bad and this is all good and this is scary and this is not, and we use a lot of really intense wording around things like where people claim to be able to cure you and
Mm.
um, offer, the treatment your doctor doesn't know about and all of these different things. And I see that kind of being a reflection of like just kind of the healthcare system in America, which isn't very supportive of everybody, right? It's very expensive.
Right.
Um, we kind of know deep down that like if something serious were to happen, we might go bankrupt because of it. It's not a supportive system and it's really
Uh,
scary to think about. So we turn to things like wellness as a means to have control. Um, and that's something that I hope that people start figuring out as time goes on. Like some of these things, like maybe they are really benign and just helping us have that like feeling of having more control over something is really helpful. In other cases, we take it too far and it can be really harmful. Um, so my hope is part of the trend is like we start really seeing that more and becoming more aware of like the polarization that's going on and being able to recognize the helpful from unhelpful pieces. Um, but wellness is definitely a booming industry, and there's a lot of options out there. A lot of my content is about like helping you figure out who to go to. And unfortunately, for all of us who operate in a more ethical capacity, like our social media content is boring and it's not flamboyant, right? We're not claiming to cure you, and those are the people you need to look for. Um, are the ones who aren't making the crazy claims.
right. Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of noise out there, and
Mhm.
it is an excess of information. It's over information, and yes, it could be misleading for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to someone that just is starting with this business within the wellness industry? Because more and more participants are, as you say, claim that they have the solution. So, being morally and ethical in this, what advice would you give to someone that is just starting within this wellness industry?
Really figure out what your values are. Like, what do you want to bring to people? Um, and like, we have to understand that, like, you don't have to have the million followers on TikTok to make a difference for people also. And that's
Right,
part of kind of the problem here, right? Is like to get a bunch of followers, we make a lot of very polarizing videos or say these really extreme things. Um, and so, like, look within your communities a little bit more for those people instead of all social media. Um, and think about like how we can really kind of, I mean, obviously my approach is like this really ethical approach, which means, and I had a chiropractor, the first chiropractor I ever went to, and I loved this so much about him. We had like one session and he was like, on Wednesday you should feel your best if you don't come back, but I hope I never see you again. And I was like, that's the best thing I've ever heard, is like, okay, I don't have to come back 3 times a week for the rest of my life. You're not claiming to move, realign my whole spine. um, so how can we work with people like that? Because that's a goal-centered approach. right?
Right.
Like if I see you 2 times and you never come back because we fixed the problem you had, that's fantastic.
Yeah, of course.
Um, it's not great for my bank account, but it's really great for like those people because ultimately we're trying to help them. So figure out what your values are and then how you can really hold that through your practice.
Yeah, I think it's a great advice to start with your values and they show that you care, genuinely care for people. And
Yeah.
then you're never gonna be missing anything and you're gonna have more clientele and even maybe not the recurrent ones because you just they just happy because they made you once, but there are a lot of people to help. So and I know that now that you mentioned that you've been in a long journey, changing even and starting and learning new things. So I guess you have had failures and you already have a challenge. So what is the biggest failure or challenge that you have faced to this point in your life, and how that has shaped the way you do business?
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of going through that right now, actually. I recently, so I have an acupuncture practice I've had since like 2010, and I've moved it a few times. Moving a business is really hard.
Hmm.
Um, and so this last year I moved again, and it was really good, and then it was really bad. And that's really scary. And one of the things that I have been kind of searching for after, like last year, I got COVID, and I have basically had long COVID for the whole year, which has been really hard. Um, and so figuring out like how do I kind of move away from this like face-to-face interactions, which has also kind of promoted the hypnosis and coaching because we do that all online.
Hmm.
Um, and so I thought about going back to school or like how do I shift things to also like help more people where I don't have to be really tied to this in-person practice. Um, and I hemmed and hawed over it for like the whole year. Like, do I go do a therapy program like an MFT? Do I like what do I do? And so I recently actually just started a program for organizational psychology, which is kind of the application of psychology to groups and organizations and mostly like businesses. So like kind of moving out of that one-to-one patient care into like what I see as like being patient care for like a whole group instead of just one person.
Okay.
So I think as far as like most of the challenges I've had have always involved a pivot like that, where like something you have to kind of realize that it's not working the way you wanted it to. And we kind of throw the kitchen sink at it to try to make it work. And then at some point we accept, like, okay, this is not following the trajectory and the path that I wanted to, and how do I kind of shift gears so that I can do something else. So we had that happen earlier with like just not being able to be in person because of lockdown things and like shifting to hypnosis and coaching, and then now like again like realizing, oh, this is it's no longer really kind of the way I want things to go. And so I'm focusing more on like the coaching and hypnosis, and also like starting this new program to like shift again. um, and so I've kind of done that a lot, where just change gears.
Right. It's a never-ending journey. So let's talk about the future. What is the next growth area for you personally and for your business?
I think this like new program is absolutely on that list. So it's kind of, for me, I've been an entrepreneur like the whole time. So the idea of like working in a corporation sounds kind of terrible. um, it's not a place I've really fitted. And if you've ever done like there's a tool called the predictive index, which kind of gives you a kind of type for how you work. And I'm a maverick in that type, which is sort of like, give me the project, I'll finish it, but I'm going to do it in my own way. And so like having that sort of freedom and things to do have always been a challenging part of me fitting into organizations, which where like this organizational psychology degree is coming up as like I can do consulting with that, and I can kind of shift and make it what I want because there's a lot of different avenues to fit in there. Uh, so that's kind of my future trajectory, where we're kind of going into this sort of hibernation of school and finishing that program. And as far as like my business goes, things are still continuing to be open because we're doing everything at one time. And I've been writing a lot, so I have a couple of proposals out for books that I'm interested in writing and seeing if anything kind of grabs hold. One of which I plan to self-publish. Maybe it will be out by the spring, and that one's called Beyond Limitations, and it's a book about like it's kind of a self-help book through that lens of like you don't have to make your thing go away in order to heal, in order to change things. Like we can still have an experience of healing even if we have a terminal diagnosis. So how we're shifting that kind of internal landscape as opposed to always trying to change the external factors.
Well, it sounds exciting. Yeah, writing a book is always something that allows us to really connect with a lot of people, even people that you won't meet in your life, but just knowing that you may change someone's life through the book or through the information that you have and you have experienced, I think is a very good way to give your message to many people, one to many, as you say, to a group. So I have this funny question I have to ask because I like this question. If you could have lunch with one person, living or dead, who would it be and why?
There's so many choices.
That's good. Choose one. Well, give us one example.
Yeah. Well, so recently I've been like looking at a lot of my like family tree stuff and ancestry. And so like everybody obviously like came to America from other countries. And it's so fascinating to me. Like, how did you even do that? Like, how did you get all the way over here? How did like in the 1800s, like you didn't have an airplane. So I would love to have lunch with like one of if like a great grandpa they came from Italy, and like to just find out more about that whole process and like what a leap of faith in some sense, like to just hop on a boat and go for a new adventure when you're like 18. That's so wild. Yeah,
that's amazing. The mentality and the mindset of those people, and I know you mentioned something in the invitation that I sent you, and you responded talking about courage, right? So even to figure it out, and maybe it's in your blood right now through your ancestors, you have this courage of adventure, this courage of going after something that you have never done before. So maybe that's why you're an entrepreneur, and maybe most of your family are, because you came from those ancestors with a lot of courage to really gain it all or risk it all, right? So that would be amazing.
I never thought about that. That's very
That would be amazing to talk with someone like that. So what is the best way for people to contact you, and if they like to work with you or discuss referral partnerships?
Totally. So my website is couragetotransform.com. I also have kimpeirano.com, and social media wise, TikTok at Courage to Transform. I just started a Blue Sky, really liking that, and that's like kimpeirano.bluesky, whatever the link is for Blue Sky. And then Instagram is also at Courage to Transform. So Courage to Transform or my real name, all the social media things are great ways to find me.
Perfect. Well, so this was fantastic. I really enjoyed our conversation today. So thank you so much, Kim, for joining me on the podcast. Thank you for joining me on Big Life Weekly series. I hope today's episode gave you the insight, inspiration, and tools you need to move closer to the life you're meant to live. Remember, true success isn't just about what you achieve. It's about how you feel while you're achieving it. If you found value in our conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with others who are ready to embrace their big life. Until next time, stay focused, keep growing, enjoy life, and break free.